in this world of Amazon, but the new CEO bringing people into the stores, but also sending people into folks' homes. It's a must-read.
Nice to get a story of a retailer that's surviving, too.
More Bloomberg TV starts right now.
July 22nd. Dogecoin live.
Bracing for Brexit, EU members are told to escalate preparations for a no-deal outcome as financial institutions survey the new regulatory landscape. Culture shift, we look at the FCA's attempts to tame the City of London after successive scandals. And tipping the balance, Brett Kavanaugh joins the US Supreme Court, completing the most conservative lineup in generations. What does his appointment mean for financial regulation? Welcome to Bloomberg Markets Rules and Returns. I'm Naira Chehich in London. Rules and Returns is the show where we delve into the regulatory challenges and opportunities for financial markets around the globe. But first, let's get a roundup of this week's news. Here's Sebastian Salek. Seb.
Thanks, Naira. Big banks outside the ranks of Wall Street giants could benefit from a regulatory rollback outlined by Fed Vice Chairman Randy Karls. He wants less frequent stress testing for regional lenders, as well as a lighter approach to risk-weighted capital expectations. The plan follows the Dodd-Frank Act, the Congress passed in May, which gives the Fed 18 months to consider a new system for overseeing banks between $100 and $250 billion in assets. UK regulators are shaking up the $2 trillion pension manager market. The Competition and Markets Authority has proposed rules to help the biggest pension funds get a better deal from the firms they pay for investment management advice. The suggested changes include an obligation for funds selecting their first fiduciary manager to run a competitive tender. Asset managers must also give clearer information on fees and past performance. And Wall Street's dark pools are coming out of the shadows. The SEC has unanimously approved rules that force the trading venues to disclose more data and reveal potential conflicts of interest. The regulation was first proposed in 2015 after firms including UBS paid tens of millions of dollars to settle allegations that they allowed practices that benefited high-frequency traders without properly informing other clients. And that's your regulation news roundup. Naira.
Thanks so much, Seb. Now, the UK's Brexit negotiations with Brussels are still at a halt while Prime Minister Theresa May seeks unity on her vision for life outside the European Union. The split is due to bring with it a host of regulatory changes as relations between Britain and the EU are fundamentally reshaped. But while European money managers are making adjustments, are US investors paying enough attention to how the regulatory landscape will change for them? Our next guest has more than 20 years of experience in advising financial services companies, investors and asset managers. Joining us now is Robert Mirsky, Global Head of Asset Management and UK Managing Partner at Eisner Amper. Great to have you with us here, Robert.
Thank you.
So, what sort of Brexit should asset managers in the UK be preparing for right now?
Well, I think it's tough to sort of guess where we're going to end up, but where we are is that we've got a 21-month transition period past, past the March deadline. And within that time period, I think what we're going to find is that there should end up being something that will be positive for asset managers, both in the UK and in the EEA.
If we get the sort of deal where there is a trade deal on goods, but not on financial services, what implications does that have for asset managers in particular? We tend to talk a lot about banks, but what about the asset managers?
So I think asset managers really need to be thinking about a few things. I think asset managers need to be thinking about, what's my business going to look like on a go-forward basis? And that's UK asset managers, but it's EEA asset managers too. Do I need to have a new structure in place? Do I need to move people around? And how am I going to be able to trade? And most importantly, how am I going to be able to raise money in Europe or in the UK, depending on which jurisdiction I'm in?
And what is the answer to that final question in terms of raising money in Europe and the UK?
It's not an easy answer at this point. The hope is that there'll be some continuation of passporting. Certainly, one thing that's on the table is a grandfathering for asset managers that currently are able to passport between the two jurisdictions. I think what we have to consider is whether or not post that 21-month transition period, we're actually going to see the ability for asset managers to do that. U.S. asset managers are already in that third country exception sort of place that UK asset managers will likely end up being in. So there is precedent for raising money in Europe by U.S. asset managers.
Now, does that mean that at the end of all this, then, US asset managers kind of come out as the winners if you compare them to the UK and maybe even the rest of Europe?
No, I think that it'll be US asset managers will be in a similar situation. I think UK asset managers, already are subject to European regulation. They're already thinking about European regulation and how they need to interact. And so US asset managers slightly further behind in that. So really, we may end up seeing UK asset managers better able to raise money in Europe going forward.
Okay. If we combine sort of the potential effects of Brexit, and I know there's a lot of uncertainty around it still, with what's happening with MiFID II and the changes to research, what does the UK asset management industry end up looking like at the end of all this?
Well, I think what UK asset managers need to do, so if you think about, again, we go back to raising money, UK asset managers raise a lot more money from the UK than they do from Europe right now. And in hedge funds, for example, in particular, it's something like a 4-to-1 ratio of raising money for hedge funds. So UK asset managers, when you think about MiFID, when you think about all these other rules, really need to make sure that their future plans are fit for purpose. And that probably means that they're going to end up having separate product lines, products for UK and products for Europe. And so you start to see asset managers in the UK moving people and moving functions to Europe. And so what are the implications of that? There are tax implications, structure implications, HR implications from all of that.
What's the impact on the bottom line?
Probably more expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, simply put, it would have to be more expensive. But if you're going to want to raise money, if you're going to want to trade in the EU, you're going to have to end up setting up these different products.
And what impact does that have then on the end investor and the client? Does it end up costing them more as well?
I'm not sure that it'll end up costing them more. I think that you've seen a move for asset managers to reduce their costs through the use of technology and things like that. And so I think some of these regulatory challenges can be dealt with through the use of technology and outsourcing and things like that. So, I'm not sure that ultimately the cost will be drastically more. I think that the operational cost, though, to asset managers will be much higher.
All right. When clients come to you and you talk them through all these different regulatory challenges, what's sort of like the number one question that keeps coming up again and again?
It goes back to the product question. Do I need to have separate product for the UK post-Brexit? Do I need to have separate product for Europe? And what do I need to think about in setting up those products? Because there isn't really a defined line yet. We don't know where we're going to end up. And so, you know, I think if you look at the regulators, take Luxembourg and Ireland, for example. Luxembourg and Ireland regulators are both saying, look, we're happy to continue to allow you to use these products. If you're managing EEA products through the UK, we're happy to continue to allow that management to happen. And so, you know, the bottom line is I'm not sure that this will end up for UK asset managers being the end of the world. I think it'll be something that they'll have to deal with. There'll be additional operational constraints and things to deal with. But I don't think it's the end of the world.
Will we see more consolidation?
Probably, because of the infrastructure requirements that you're going to have here, there's bound to be some additional consolidation. The M&A activity is picking up. I was in the U.S. recently, and when I was in the U.S., a number of the larger asset managers in the U.S. said, hey, you know, we want to get into Europe. We want to get into the UK. Again, considering the UK is one of the largest investor markets for asset management, how do we do that? One option is M&A. One option is to look to acquire an asset manager in the UK and an asset manager in Europe.
All right, not the end of the world and possibly more consolidation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
To Robert Mirsky, Global Head of Asset Management and UK Managing Partner at Eisner Amper. Thank you so much. Now, up next, Culture Shift. We look at the FCA's attempts to stamp out shady practices in the financial services industry. This is Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Markets Rules and Returns. I'm Neera Cehic at Bloomberg's European headquarters in London. Now, the question of how to create a good culture in the financial services industry has rarely been out of the spotlight in recent years, thanks to successive scandals that have damaged the sector's reputation. The Financial Conduct Authority in the UK has had its work cut out trying to shake up the system to improve standards. But our next guest says that having the legal framework isn't enough and that regulators must use their powers to make it effective. Joining us now for a look at the FCA's ambitions to change culture in the financial sector is Jamie Symington, partner at Brown Rudnick. He advises clients on compliance with financial regulations and previously worked at the Financial Conduct Authority. Delighted to have you with us, Jamie. So with your wealth of experience, just tell me, where does all this come from?
I think it goes back a few years now. I mean, you mentioned the financial crisis, and that was followed by what's often described now as the conduct crisis, whereby we saw widespread conduct issues, both in the retail sector with PPI mis-selling, and then on the wholesale side with the scandals of market manipulation in Forex and in LIBOR. And I think those things created what I think commentators at the time said, and are still saying, is that there was an ebb of trust. Trust reached a low point between society and consumers and the industry. Yeah. And what was regarded, and is still regarded as being one of the root causes of this, is a cultural, is whether the industry has the right culture. And if you look back to the times of when Adair Turner was chairman of the FCA, he was already talking about this, and it's become, that discussion has continued right up to the present day, where the FCA has published a paper recently on culture.
Yeah, and the shift to actually talking about culture, I mean, this seems to me quite groundbreaking. What would kind of be done differently here than what was done in the past?
Well, I think where the emphasis is really being placed now is that the regulators, and I think the industry has realised that in order to achieve cultural change, it can't just be about the firms and the institutions. It has to be about the people, and it has to be about the individuals who lead those institutions taking on personal accountability and taking on personal responsibility for the issues that arise in those firms. And that's why we've seen this shift in the approach of regulation, moving from where it historically was of imposing large fines on firms, and we've seen fines of sort of $3.5 billion on firms within the last 5 years, to placing more emphasis on individuals to take responsibility.
But how do you regulate someone's behaviour?
That's a very difficult thing for the industry and the regulator that has to struggle with that. What has happened is that following a review of this by the Parliamentary Commission on Banking Standards, recommendations were made which then led into legislation, which created a new raft of regulation called the Senior Managers regime and the certification regime, that imposes particular responsibilities on those individuals. It's an entirely new layer of regulation. And this is critical to achieving that, to regulating those individuals.
What does this mean for the actual corporates within which the individuals work? Does it put less pressure on them? Does it mean less potential fines and costs because you're focusing on individuals?
Well, it means they have to have certain processes in place to ensure that their firms are properly run. So they have to ensure under these senior managers regime, they have to ensure that there is proper accountability, there are lines of accountability for each area of the business, and that senior people are responsible for those areas of the business. And they have to have what's known as an accountability map, a responsibility map, that maps out within the firm where these responsibilities lie, so that it becomes very clear when something goes wrong where that responsibility lies. And then on top of that, there are standards that are imposed on those people. There is a duty of responsibility on those people who hold those senior roles to take proper steps to make sure that those firms are properly run. And if they don't follow those steps within an area where they are responsible, then they are personally accountable and can face fines themselves.
Do your clients say that this approach will work better than what's happened in the past?
Our clients are certainly taking it a lot more seriously. Our clients are certainly very, very much aware of what's happening and aware of their responsibilities, and I think, you know, within the firms themselves, the way that they are now organised does clearly make out does clearly set out the responsibilities of those individuals.
Is this something that the FCA is leading on in terms of regulators around the world, or is it something that other regulators in other jurisdictions are starting to turn their attention to as well?
I think we are seeing a shift all over the world towards increased individual accountability. We've certainly seen it in the United States, you know, particularly with the DOJ issuing a memo a couple of years ago, the Yates memo as it's known, urging prosecutors and urging their organisation to hold individuals to account. We see it in Europe as well. And we also see it in Hong Kong and Australia, so I think it is a global phenomenon.
Thank you so much to Jamie Symington, partner at Brown Rudnick and former Director of Investigations at the Financial Conduct Authority. Up next, we look at the implications of Brett Kavanaugh's appointment to the US Supreme Court and what that means for financial regulation. This is Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Markets Rules and Returns. I'm Naira Chahich at Bloomberg's European headquarters in London. Now, President Trump's recent appointment of Brett Kavanaugh created potentially the most conservative lineup in generations. The Washington insider and former aide to President George W. Bush has been a skeptic of regulatory power. Bureau. Joining us now from Washington, D.C. are Greg Storr, Bloomberg's U.S. Supreme Court reporter, and Nathan Dean, Senior Financial Services Analyst at Bloomberg Intelligence. Great to speak to you both, guys. Let me start with you, Greg. So I saw a sum up from a professor that Brett Kavanaugh is basically a fan of presidential power and not a fan of agency power. Is that how you would sum it up?
Yeah, absolutely. And keep in mind, he has been on the Federal Appeals Court that handles the vast majority of challenges to agency regulations. So this is primarily what he's been doing for the past dozen years. And yes, as a general matter, not every specific case, but certainly as a general matter, he likes to restrict the power of agencies to issue rules if they don't have a clear mandate from Congress. And he would put agencies under stronger presidential control, which, particularly when you have a Republican president, would mean an even more business-friendly climate, probably.
Greg, talk to me about the Chevron doctrine. What is it, and what implications are there with Brett Kavanaugh where he is now?
Yeah, so the Chevron doctrine comes from a Supreme Court case that basically said, hey, if you have a statute and it's not completely clear what it means, we will defer to the expert agency, like the EPA, for example, to tell us what it means. And if what they're saying is we have more authority to regulate in this particular area, we will defer to them. That doctrine has come under pressure from some of the conservative justices. The other Trump appointee who joined the court last year, Neil Gorsuch, highly critical of the Chevron doctrine. Judge Kavanaugh has been as well, perhaps not quite as much, but together the two of them, along with the other conservative justices, could well restrict or even overturn the Chevron doctrine.
Greg, what I'm trying to work out is whether Judge Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court actually means a rollback of regulation or just not more regulation. Is the effect likely to be neutral, or are we just talking about more uncertainty at this point?
He could well be a force for rolling back regulations. Keep in mind, it's already been a fairly business-friendly court with Justice Kennedy, who is now retiring. So when we're talking about context outside of regulation, like restricting class action suits, letting companies enforce arbitration agreements, the court's already pretty pro-business in those areas. But this area of administrative and regulatory law is something where Judge Kavanaugh has become a real expert and could become a driving force, so that we will see the court moving more quickly in these areas to saying, no agencies, you can't regulate in that area, striking down regulations.
All right, Nathan, let me turn to you on the FinReg picture more broadly in the U.S., because we're approaching Dodd-Frank's 8th anniversary. What should financial institutions be looking ahead to in the second half and the start of 2019?
So really, the big story is over at the Federal Reserve, the Comptroller of the Currency, and the FDIC. You know, the one rule that we're telling our clients to keep an eye out for, it's called the net stable funding ratio. This was a proposal from the Obama era regulators. It hasn't been acted upon. Essentially what it does is it requires a bank, essentially $250 billion and up in assets, to have a level of funding tied to the liquidity of their assets. Now, when the proposal came out, it was anticipated that the biggest banks would have to put up about $39 billion in additional funding. That's probably much less today, just given that other regulations have pushed that up. And the reason why that we think it's important is because in a meeting several months ago, the Fed said this is something that, you know, we're interested in putting out. So, you know, just look for it to come out maybe even as soon as August. It's just something that hasn't been talked about very much.
Yeah, I mean, there's a sort of ton of rules that are being pushed here. I mean, we could talk about regulation best interest. We could
I need to sign up. I've reached my limit. All right, well, Laura 10 down here. I just finished changing the oil in my Jeep. Let's go ahead and let's look at everything. Let's see if everything's stopped, feeds. because of my internet. Looks like the feeds have frozen up. That's normal. Alright, so let's see. How's it look here? Yeah. Alright. So let's see a little news. You know, I let it go by itself a little while. Wanted to take a look at some things I've seen on our market list. Let's go ahead and add a comparison here. I'm going to add a symbol. It's kind of hard for me to type. I got my phone being looked at by the camera on my laptop here. Alright, so we just add the overlay, and we're going to go in here and change to a line for this. Let's go for a line. Let's change the color. That'll be alright. Alright, so you know, as you can see, Dogecoin kind of follows behind Bitcoin a little bit. I do believe that it broke out recently for a little while, but it's still following it pretty much to the T. Okay, we're going to back out, and back out. I don't know if this will go to that point. Let's take off these little, take off the borders, style, line. Alright. I need to take off the dots. That'll be alright. Okay, so we're looking at back in, we're going to step it back a little bit. Now it's hard to see because it's these dots. Let me see if I can fix that here. Let's see here. Candle, line. Okay. Alright. Of course my internet's gonna kind of jump a little bit. Alright, so let's see here. Doesn't quite go back as far as I want it to. Let's see. Yeah, it won't go back past 2 years ago. Should be, but it's not. You know, this graph ain't perfect to do this with, so let's see here. Let's go to the 1 year chart. Alright, so 1 year. Now, back last July, we had a jump after August and September. Basically, from the end of August, this is saying the beginning of August, we started having a jump up in Bitcoin. We had a slight jump here last year in August. You know, kind of bowed down a little bit during August. Now I do believe this is going to be double of last year, and as you can see, that's what it's trying to accomplish. So here's the line right now. Here's the line for Bitcoin, and it's almost doubled from the previous, which was 0.0022. My prediction is that it's going to copy last year's almost to the T. Now this is only going to happen this year. This is basically your second chance. Now this is all pure speculation on my part. Please do not use my advice for your investing choices. I am going to follow through on what I say here with my choices. Okay, so last year we were at 0.022. So I believe this year we're going to go through a lull. It's going to bow down to probably 32-ish, no less. And then it's going to go up to around 0.004546-ish by the end of August. Now, as this goes along, of course, we had a downspout here between, let's see, September to the 21st. Now, most of the market does this because of the whole September 11th scare that happened back in 2001. Now, I don't think it's going to be quite as bad as last year, and I do think that we aren't going to go down to 0.002. I do believe we're going to not have during September the big drop off. That scare is fading away. I do believe that this is going to turn into a flat line and then jump up in October. Now, I'm not sure if it's going to be affected by any stock market problems. I doubt it will. So we're going to go along with, by the end of August, I don't think we'll see a very bad low around 32-ish. And then we'll spike up by the end of August. We might have a little wave fall, but I think it's going to flatline for about a half month or so, and then start its rise. This is where it's going to be difficult to get in a good position. So if you're in a good position right now, I'd say 0.0036 or lower. Might want to hold on, until later next month. But we will have a little dip, and I'm hoping that this flat line that happened for 2.5 months or so, all the way up to the end of November, won't happen. And if it does, it's not going to be this. It's not going to be 0.02. It's probably going to be staying right around the flat line that we've had previously, but a hair higher. I think it won't go under 0.0032. Really don't. I think all the values have changed. They're going to be at least double or more. I'm hoping it don't do this, but this is Dogecoin, so I don't know. Depends on what kind of structures come along that help it about, news, supporters. I do think we have way more supporters than we did back then. So, and I'm new into the Dodge. But and I keep on calling it Dodge. Please, excuse me. It's Doggy. The Doggy coin. I seem to want to go to Dodge. I want to put that D in there. So, but I apologize. It's Doggy. So we got the old Doggy coin. And I do believe all the numbers are going to be at least double, if not more, maybe triple. As you can see, the highs only lasted for 2 days. 2 days. So let's say we use this mark. Let's for Bitcoin anyways, it lasted 12.5 through 1.6. Now on Dodge, it literally lasted less than a day. So let's use this high here to here. 12.26 to 112. So you had less than a month of a little bit of time to sell, and of course it's going to drop back down when everybody sells and tries to go back in. And that's my take on it. If we go by the year chart, which is probably not the smartest thing to do, and expect it to copy last year, which this is the first time we've had this kind of support in crypto. This is the first big jump, which is a sign, a good telltale sign that it will continue doing this repetitive action for at least a number of years, I believe. So let's go on over here to let's see if we can get this feed going again. I'm gonna have to sign up for some news feeds for y'all. And it looks like my internet caught up here. That's good. I don't have the best internet for this, but you know, it is what it is. Showing what's going on. So we're running, we've been stable. It did dip down. There was a buying opportunity recently. I kind of need to update this, the precision here. Let's see if I can update the precision. Scales, percentage. Auto scale. Scale by percentage now. Let's see. Call price ratio. I don't want you. Alright. Let's see here. Oh yeah. Let's go down to, I can get this better if I go to the day market. It's not good to look at the 24-hour market. It's good to look at a little bit better than that. Alright, let's go to, thought I had this online. Let's see here. Yeah. It's online. It's just, you know how the doggy goes. It waddles. Treads water. It treads water quite efficiently. And you can see where, it's following the line for Bitcoin, but you know what? I think it's breaking out of it slowly. We'll see how it goes. Now when it comes to future endeavors, I don't like this the way this line is being shown. I'm going to get rid of Bitcoins. I'm going to look at this right here. Let's get a baseline going. Alright. Let's go up to 4 hours. Okay, that's a little bit better. Okay, the impending doom of the triangle. Okay, you can see where the line here is set pretty high. The more you zoom in, the more that changes. And let's see. I'd like to zoom in this far. Okay. Not opening. Alright, that's alright. So, we got this baseline. Recently we've had a little bit of rise in volume, which is good. Always good to see that volume. Let's look at the news. Okay. Been seeing a little news here and there. Let's see here. Going to be a battle for the next couple of years. Them trying to regulate crypto. That doesn't help us much. I would keep an eye out for more cryptos being backed by Robinhood. If you look at their list of backed list. I don't got them all listed. There's quite a few. Look at oh my gods. I like saying oh my gods. It's OMG. Come on, baby. Alright. So the gains in the last year for OMG have been 850%. At one point, it was almost 3,000%. That's insane. Now, if that happens with Dodge, you know, oh my G, OMG, you know. All right, let's look at Stellar. Let's see if I can get this Stellar. I don't think this was Stellar. This is Ripple. Where is my Stellar? What was the? Was it? Can't remember. Yeah. Seeing this upside down too, you have to forgive me. Let's see. Ripple again. I don't know if I might not have it up. Okay, there's Stellar. Alright, check out this. Alright, so in the last year, 1,400% increase. At one point it was at almost 5,000 increase. You know, if they back Stellar, we're gonna have to jump in quick, because that thing's gonna jump. So if, look, it was at 0.01, you know, a year ago. If oh, if Dodge does this, a lot of people are gonna be happy. I mean, I could see where they're gonna be very pleased. So as it stands, you know, we've got our baseline here, and continues through August. Let's see, where are we at? August there? Yeah, there's August. Yeah, so we need to zoom out some more. No, can't do it. Let me back up here. Let me fix this. Alright, so what we got? Alright. See if I can get it over here. Alright, so this goes almost all the way to September. Alright, there's our baseline. And here's where we are. There was the high the other day at 0.004. Now, prior to that, it hit 0.0045. I do believe for the next several days, our triangle will be right about here, and you know, after that, you know, it's hard to judge. We might get a spike that goes up this way. I don't know when. There's always the chance of it going down to right around here, the baseline, a little bit under it. You know, it probably next week sometime, and you know, the end of the month, there's a chance it could do this. After that, it's going to get kind of tricky. Let's go ahead and fix this scale. That's not helping me here. Let's see. Base level, 50%. 100% price line. So if you look at it, when it goes up to $1, you know, when you got it scaled like this, it looks like it's a flat line no matter where you are, because it's worth so little. Now that's what makes it so easy to make money on this with small amounts of currency. Everything's flipped, so it makes it fairly interesting. See if I can get this right. Might have to do my own ratio here. Let's see. Oh, there's scale. Yeah, oh shit. Outer scale. Okay. Yeah, that's what makes it so interesting, is the fact that it's worth so little that you can put in considerable amounts less currency, you know, USD, and come out farther ahead than you would if you put the same amount of money into something worth more. So the numbers are flipped. So instead of, let's say you put in $1,000 in Bitcoin, you know, instead of gaining, you know, 50 bucks over a month, you can gain that same amount in a day or two. If you have a swing in consideration here, the size, the amount here we're talking, if you have a 2% increase, you know, you'll make more. But you'll put in far less than you would with the other cryptos that move the same amount. And that's because of the cost per coin. And that's why this is so, you know, so interesting for small-time investors. It's easier to make a buck on this than it would be for a small investor on Bitcoin. Let's see if I can get this to work now after a wait period. Sometimes they reset. No, it's reached its limit. That's alright. So we'll go ahead and tag this. Maybe I'll sign into that later. Alright. Let's see if we can get some Fox News on here. Alright. Suspect shot his grandmother 7 times. How are you gonna do that to your grandmother? Then he took his girlfriend out before taking hostages and killing a cop. You know, mental instability. Mental instability. Let's see. Hooker style shorts. Well, sexing up the young kids today. Let's see. Dallas officer. Mucci. North Korea sanctions. Well, we might have to turn on a little mood music. Let's see if this will pick up. Oh, interesting. Little anime music. interesting. Wow, look at that boat. The phone you see right there is an iPhone SE. One of the cheaper model iPhones. Older, but still quite capable. I'm glad I got it.
You're watching Reuters TV. Here are your top stories.
Trump's spy chief is in the hot seat and is in damage control mode.
That's going to be special.
Trump breaks his silence on reports his former lawyer secretly recorded him.
Low water levels are threatening the livelihoods of an entire Iraqi community. This is Reuters Now.
I think we have to be relentless in terms of calling out the Russians for what they've done.
Spy Chief Dan Coats has been at odds with President Trump over the threat posed by Russia, but on Saturday he was in damage control. In a statement, Coats said that he in no way meant to be disrespectful towards President Donald Trump with what he called his, quote, awkward response to news of a second planned Trump summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Washington, D.C. The awkward moment coming on stage in Aspen, Colorado, with NBC's Andrea Mitchell telling him the news.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's going to be special.
That reaction going viral and making Trump advisors livid, according to the Washington Post, the paper quoting one aide saying that Coats had gone rogue, raising questions whether Coats might be shown the door. At Thursday's event, Coats also said he would have advised against Trump meeting privately with Putin in Helsinki if he had been asked, acknowledging 4 days after the summit that he still did not know what had been said in the room, musing that Putin might have recorded the conversation. Those comments doing nothing nothing to quiet the bipartisan storm over Trump's performance in Helsinki, as he seemed to accept Putin's denials of election interference over the word of his own intelligence community.
President Putin, he just said it's not Russia. I will say this, I don't see any reason why it would be.
Trump later saying he misspoke.
I said the word would instead of wouldn't.
But a day after that, suggesting that Russia was no longer targeting the United States, prompting another mop-up by the White House. By contrast, Coates has been consistent, saying before the summit, quote, the warning lights were blinking red on Russian cyber attacks, and on Thursday saying there's no question Moscow had been hacking the elections. In his statement Saturday, Coates did not disavow his differences with the president over Russia, leaving questions whether he could still be the next top Trump official headed for the exit.
When it's unclear how much you can get for your current car, the Kelley Blue Book Instant Cash offer can bring things in.
Well, what do we got going on here? Looks like Bitcoin Diamond price doubles. Let's see what that's about. Bitcoin Diamond price doubles on hit BTC listing. Crypto land is pretty flat. Altcoins recovering slightly are Stellar, Tezos, and Ox. But Bitcoin Diamond is pumping. The weekend's been quiet in crypto land with no major gains or losses. Markets are up marginally, creeping above 280 billion again, with little direction for future momentum. Bitcoin has moved backwards towards resistance levels of 7,400, pushing slightly above it with a 1.7% gain to 7,450. If buyers continue throughout the day, there could be another rally up to 8K. Ether has been sluggish over the past few days with minor gains, keeping it just above 465. Tell me about it. Altcoins are all in the green at the moment, with Stellar leading the top 10 pack. You know, I do believe Stellar might be one of the next ones Robinhood backs up. So keep your eyes out, because that will make it jump up. And to get in and then make a quick buck, hey, more power to you. XLM is currently trading at 0.295 according to the CMC. It surpassed Litecoin to take 6th place in the charts last week. Since last Sunday, Stellar has gained 27% from 0.214. Against Bitcoin, it is up 5.3% on the day to 3,970 Satoshis. And you can read the rest here. Bitcoin Diamond. Look at that jump. Nice.
Face between each other. I think this makes enormous sense, and I'm very hopeful that that meeting will take place this fall.
With Kelley Blue Book, you don't have to be clear on the exact car you need. Just that it needs to fit all the kids.
All the kids.
No new rules related to the anthem will be issued or enforced for the next few weeks during training and preseason, while the confidential discussions continue.
Green thumbs can only do so much here. This is Caracas's Botanical Garden, a UNESCO World Heritage Site once popular with tourists and locals seeking serenity. But the gardens have been dry since March.
So
far in 2018, almost 50% of what was in the greenhouse died because of the lack of water.
Crumbling infrastructure and lack of investments have hit Venezuela's water supply for years, made worse by a recent drought. Reuters correspondent Andreina Aponte is standing by the garden's largest lake, shaped like Venezuela, now half empty.
And as you can see behind me, here is Laguna Venezuela. It needs 1,000 liters of water to keep exotic water lilies from around the world alive.
The acclaimed 2-meter-wide Santa Cruz water lily has already dried out. Other prized collections are also in decay.
In the entrance of the park, there used to be this huge road that had palm trees surrounding it, and now most of them are dead.
Adding insult to injury, the director of the garden says looters stole some pipes and part of the sprinkler system last year. They also stripped the gardens of their electric cables, computers, and irrigation pipes, making it impossible to maintain the rare aquatic plants that were being grown in a specially designed greenhouse. Staff have petitioned the government for more resources, but with Venezuelans themselves facing a water shortage, queuing up for hours to fill water bottles, the future of the garden does not look rosy.
Working 60 hours a week is tough for anyone, but it's even harder when you're 9 months pregnant. That's the reality for Can Sri Tu. She's 27. She's already a mum to a 4-year-old boy, and she works in this shoe factory in Cambodia. Her country's preparing for an election next week, but they've had the same leader, Hun Sen, for more than 30 years. Reuters photojournalist Anne Wang recently spent time with her to see what life is like for Cambodia's voters.
She's probably one of the bravest women I've ever met. I mean, she's 9 months pregnant, and she still gets up at 6 in the morning, prepare her son for the day, and then take an open-air truck for 30 minutes to the factory, and then she sits there for 11 hours. It's little pieces that's handmade, hand-sewed together.
Hun Sen had 2 close electoral calls in 2013 and 2017, and this year he's playing tough politics to make sure it doesn't happen again. Can Sri says she knows that speaking out about Cambodian politics is a risky business. She says her and her husband just want to make sure they can keep their son in school and try to give him a better life than them.
Cuba has taken yet another step to show its citizens and the world that it's opening up. The communist-run state has just started providing internet on mobile phones. Journalists were among the first to get access, and now Cuba aims to roll out the service across the whole nation by the end of this year. Whether it's been a lack of cash to invest or concerns about the flow of information, Cuba has lagged behind when it comes to internet access. Cuba's new president, Diaz-Canel, who came into office this April, has long campaigned for the so-called informatization of society. But some remain skeptical.
The problem is not when it will arrive, but how it will be done. If we don't have prices that Cubans can afford, it's as though we didn't have it in the first place.
Meanwhile, Cuba is slowly returning to the wish list of American holidaymakers, with cruise ships helping boost numbers. The island had seen a slump in the number of US tourists, mainly because of US President Donald Trump's hostile stance towards the nation. Last year, he issued a travel warning to Americans, saying it may be unsafe to visit there. Plus, Cuba is still recovering from last year's devastating hurricane season in the Caribbean. Now the country hopes the newfound internet access, which makes it easier for businesses to operate, was the right call.
Stage separation confirmed. And you heard the callouts and saw the visual confirmation of main engine cutoff, stage separation from those onboard cameras, and then second engine start.
Vehicle on nominal trajectory.
Stage 1 entry burn has started. And there you have it. This burn will last for about 20 seconds.
The death of dozens of water buffalo in Iraq's southeastern wetlands is threatening the livelihoods of a whole community. Low water levels in the marshes, along with water salinity, or the saltiness of the water, more than doubling as a result, is having a deadly impact on the animals who've been bred by marsh dwellers in the area for millennia. As a result, more than 30 water buffalo have died in the last month, and many more are threatened with disease as the water level falls. It's prompted a vaccination campaign, but for many the impact has already been devastating.
At first water became scarce and boats stopped coming to the area, and after that our animals started to lose weight and then die. We gave them medicine, but in vain. The buffalo return home to lay on straw and die, and we often slaughter them, while we burn others which we found dead in the water. We have been badly harmed.
The lack of water is in part caused by the low priority given to agriculture by the central government and years of mismanagement of water resources. Corruption and climate change also play a role. The government is facing calls to find a solution through water sharing agreements with neighbouring countries. Otherwise, experts fear buffalo breeders in the marshes will be left with no other option but to migrate.
Stage separation confirmed. And you heard the callouts and saw the visual confirmation of main engine cutoff, stage separation from those on, and then second engine start.
Vehicle on nominal trajectory.
Stage 1 entry burn has started. And there you have it. This burn will last for about 20 seconds.
Alright, let's change it up a little bit. First thing I need to do is turn off this. Okay, it's off, that's good. Gonna have to put my fingerprint ID on here. There we go. Fix that. Let's see. Got the feed going there. There it goes. Good. Alright, let's watch some anime. Wrong. That's wrong, mate. No. So watch some anime. You know, I love anime. Can't get enough of it. Let's see what we're gonna watch. Latest episodes. Oh, there's a new One Piece out. Got to see it. Just came out. And let's kind of increase the size of this a little. Let's see. I want to cover up the covering up the feed. Let's see, let's move this over. Let's raise this up a hair. Let's see. play this whole thing. It'll load. Looks like we got a volume problem. Don't know why. Don't know why. That's been silenced. See if it fixes itself. No. Let's try to reset that. Second. I'm getting to my point. Let's see, it's 9:17 a.m. 7/22/2018. Getting to that point where my internet slows down a hair. Probably have to end it here soon. Let's just watch this beginning. And if you haven't watched One Piece, there's 846 episodes. For goodness sakes, it's a great storyline, good characters. They flesh it out over a long period of time to grow up. Now I may have to skip forward. I'm going to play a couple seconds of the beginning music, then I'll skip forward because of copyright. And that's all you're going to get. I'm going to go ahead and skip forward to the actual story. And it looks like my loading is going to kill it. Yeah. What a bummer. It's just the way it goes. Someone found some gold and now they're going to start a new crypto backed in gold. Hey, could you imagine if crypto was backed with gold? Gold standard. Could you imagine that? You know, the dollar ain't on. Wedding cake. I demand wedding cake.
私のシフォンケーキが必要なのね。ええ。私が作るチョコレートとレイさんが。
Oh, poor loading times. Destroys everything.
作るシフォンケーキならママが満足するウェディングケーキができる。
Alright, I'm not going to be able to stand this. Alright, so, you know, had a little fun with this live feed for a little while. This is my third one. little rundown here. My position. Standing on a little over 1,000. Basically, made a little money in crypto recently. My 1 week, I'm up 46%. My 1 month is at 41%. So, all thanks to Dodge at this point. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. So I'm going to end this here. Let me just, before I go, I'm going to give you a rundown of, let me see if I can find it. Where did it go? My predictions on Bitcoin. And let's go through it a little bit. Okay, so for 2018, August, Bitcoin prices, the beginning of August. Now, the end of July, I had us at a high of 75.83, and we were going to close it in a couple days. We're going to close it right around 7 grand. August, when it opens, it's going to open up at 7 grand, and then it's going to die down a little bit. We're going to see some lows right around 55. Now, it's going to be a great buying opportunity, and basically it's not going to go up through the month. We're going to go down probably about 10 or so %. Now, when September occurs, we're going to have a pretty good increase of I'm going to say we're going to have an increase of about 2 or 3%, and that's going to continue to double and triple. October, we're going to see our first 8,000 plus month for highs, and that's going to be the last good buying opportunities right around September and August. Damn, October through December, it's going to almost hit 10 grand. I do believe in January, that's when it's going to start taking off. And so is all the coins are going to start taking off for the next couple of years. It's going to be insane. The highs in 2019 are going to be right around 27 towards the end of the year, 27K. 2020, we're going to go on up to almost 50,000 at the end of the year. And then that will continue. Basically, we'll bounce around the 50,000 to 30,000 lows in 2021. It will be insane. Imagine what all the other cryptos will do. You know, getting out farther than, a day or two in crypto, it's a big guess. But it's fun to do. Everybody has their speculations. You never know what's going to happen in crypto, so take my advice with a grain of salt, please. Don't do any investing because of me. This is just for pure entertainment. And I used to do Starman videos, and they're on hold for now until I get another PC. My PC, my main high-grade laptop died on me. Excuse me. And you know how it goes. Let's see if I can find a quick end to this. I think I got something or another here. I don't know what this is. Ah. Oh, copyright. Can't do that. I'll get copyrighted. So, you know how it is. You know, copyrights and such. Let's see here. Computer. Let's go to videos. Let's see. Yeah, this is gonna end it for me. Yeah. Let's go back here. Let me redo that. Let's see if it plays. Interesting. Hey, I'm just really messing up this ending here. Oh man. Let me see what I can find. I don't know what I got here. Let's see. Folder empty. Yeah, if I got a lot of learning to do here, I'd tell you what. It's wrong file. Let's see, edit. There we go. Wish I could do Starman videos again. I really do. It's just not gonna happen for now. So sad too, because I was having fun doing them. Alright guys, peace out. This is Laru Tanton. It's the end. I got to leave. And it's been real nice talking to you. Real nice. So until next time, bye.